What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the H Panel, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Rachel Engstrom. Rachel is a former cancer wife and widow, an advocate for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and the author of the book Wife, Widow, Now What? Rachel was so fun to talk to, and I really think that this conversation and the work that she's doing is super important. So once this episode is done, you guys can check all her stuff out. I'll put all the links down below. It is really important work and needs to be discussed. Now, this episode comes out on Sunday, but on Tuesday, it is my birthday. Woo! Another quarantine birthday. Round of applause for that. So if you are listening to this right now, I just wanted to know, how did you guys celebrate your birthdays in quarantine? I'm trying to come up with ideas because really the best thing I've got is sit on the couch and binge watch Netflix. And I feel like my birthday should be a little more exciting than that. I don't know. So if you could send me your ideas through DM, through email, through anything, that would be greatly appreciated. Now, before we get into our ad, courtesy of yourmd.ca, please, if you're listening to this, like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on a podcast platform, share with someone who might need to hear this episode. It is a really great one, and I can't wait for you all to listen. I'll talk to you very soon. Peace. So before we get into this interview with Rachel, I am here with Sean Kanungo from Your MD. Sean, what's going on, man?
Harry, I'm so excited about this pod. Again, another amazing episode with Rachel. And Harry, before I get into the pod, you've been doing such a great job with this podcast. What is your secret to staying active? Because it's a lot of work.
Yes, staying physically active, you mean?
Yes.
Oh my God, dude, you got to find the time. You got to prioritize your time, man. This podcast takes hours. Not just the interview takes about an hour, hour and a half. It's whatever. It's a casual conversation, but then you got to do the editing and the sound editing and all of this jazz, the promoting. So I just try my best to go for walks in the times I have free. I do Muay Thai at night, 7 to 8 p.m. just to get that sweat on and get humbled very quickly by some really talented people. And I just pray that works. That's it. That's my workout regime right now, man.
Well, you're practicing what you preach here on this pod, right? Because it's all about health. And I'm really excited about this interview with Rachel because I reading the description of her book, which was Wife, Widow, Now What? I'm curious to sort of dive into her story. So really excited about hearing from her. Really excited about sponsoring this pod. For those of you who don't know, I'm from a digital health startup in Canada called YourMD. .ca. We help individuals connect with unbelievable physicians, licensed practitioners across this country. And we're helping people not go to the doctor's office. We're trying to streamline the entire process. And so one of the things that we're helping guys with is if your hair is thinning, you can connect with one of our physicians online and we can get you connected with the right prescriptions right there and then. And excited to make it seamless and efficient for Canadians, and it's been unbelievable working with some of these physicians. So we're excited about hearing from this pod. We're excited for sponsoring this pod, Harry. And so let's get into it.
Let's do it, man. Yourmd.ca. I'll put that in the description down below. Everyone, please go check it out. Please enjoy this episode. I'm Harry Potvin, and this is the H Panel. We are live. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. That's right. Before we get started here, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So what got you into this journey that you're on right now?
Yeah. So in general, I've always loved working with people, helping people for whatever reason. Like my mom she would tell you ever since I was little, I'm drawn to people that not quote unquote have issues, but or people are drawn to me that need help, that need support, all these different things. I've even had an interest in aging and different things. She was like, you used to point out old people in magazines and be like, they're cute. So I've always, and she'll say we would be at a store and you would say, how are you to the checkout person or whatever. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's little and she asks and she cares. So I guess I've just kind of had this authentic wanting to help people. And I've worked in mental health the last 13 years. And then, so when I was 28, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And then 2 days after I turned 31, I had to take him off life support. So I've had catastrophic, traumatic things in my life, on that front of the huge things of who I am, as well as, working in mental health, being sensitive to the needs of people that have been overlooked. So I actually have my master's degree in social work and advocating and helping people because there are just so many people that don't have a voice.
Mhm.
And now it's almost in April, it'll be 8 years since my late husband died. And I'm actually, as of yesterday, running for Woman of the Year in the state of Minnesota, trying to raise $60,000, my late husband's name, for blood cancer research and patient education and treatments and things like that. So it kind of just blows my mind where I've been on my journey, because I've had a lot of hard things to get me here to where I am in life, where I just have this unlimited, yes, I just took a nap between work and this, but I have an unlimited amount of energy, it seems, despite some of my own health issues and things, to just want to help people. When I hear that someone is sick or different things, I really want to get out there and help people and use my experience. So that's where I am in life right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, first off, congrats for the Woman of the Year. That's
Thank you.
huge. That's awesome. Um, I think it's also important. I'm glad that I'm talking to you because it's important to know that like people who do help other people, like at the position that you're in, they still go through stuff as well. I know for a lot of people that I know personally, like this idea of like therapists and doctors is like they're perfect and they don't go through it. And people are like, oh, you don't get it because you'll never go through something like this. It's like, well, they have their own stuff going on. And sometimes when you recognize that, it makes them more human and almost makes the whole process a little less uncomfortable, which I found
Mhm.
in my personal experience anyway. So
Yeah, and therapists totally have their own therapist as well.
mhm, yeah,
We all need support. We all need these different things, and it's um so like someone that I'm friends with from grad school, and I graduated in 2009. One of her children ended up having a serious mental illness to the point of trying to jump out of a car a couple years ago and needing to be hospitalized and things like that. And then 2 weeks ago, she found out her husband needed a triple bypass surgery, and she's jumping into this world of having to figure out insurance and these things I help you navigate in my book, along with tons of other stuff. But it's just like she's the person that traditionally is a therapist and helps other people, but you really don't think about these things because um, you know, I think it's so hard because in the world we live in with social media, people just portray the perfect parts of themselves as well. So I
yeah.
think that that's the really, really tricky part too.
Yeah, that's a huge topic that I have on this show about social media is like I'm on it all the time. I love it, but at the same time it's like there's so many negatives to how well, I don't know about negatives, but like people have to take everything on there with a grain of salt, and I say that as someone who has taken it too seriously. I'm like, why is everyone's life so much better than mine? It's like, well, it might not be, man. They're just not showing it. Like it's a tough concept to grasp. And the other thing is like when you're on there so much, you think that's the world, like that's it. Like Instagram is the world. And then you get out and you're like, "Oh, well, it's really not."
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think it's whether it's you're comparing bodies or money or different things like that, people aren't going to portray the ugly parts. They're not going to portray those things. And when people do, so I didn't Facebook friend or even reach out to more than probably 6 or 7 people that I went to high school with, and I'll be 39 soon. So it's been 20 years.
Mm,
And because I was just like, and I didn't, granted, it would cost a plane ticket. I'm from Michigan to go to like a high school reunion or anything like that, but I didn't go to the 10-year one. I hated high school. People were nice. It was a nice town, but I just left. My brother and sisters went to school in Michigan, and I was like, I just have to go somewhere different. But a big part was it wasn't that I was ashamed by any means, but it was kind of like, and reaching out, and I'm emailing and contacting everyone, to try to raise money for blood cancer. And the tricky thing was, I didn't contact these people not because I thought that they had perfect lives, but over the last 10 years of my life, because it was 2011 when my late husband got sick. um 6 months after he died, I had a hysterectomy. I have really crappy health myself, so it's like everybody's posting pictures of their children and their happy marriages and all these things, and it's like I'm sitting here alone in Minnesota. My family's in different states. My husband's dead. I can't have kids. How do I connect with you people? Like, how do I, and even just thinking about, we didn't have it because of COVID, but like our 20-year reunion, I was thinking like, I'm in a happier place in my life and have a positive relationship and things like that in my life, which I actually don't talk about on these things because it's a fun catch in the end of my book. But um because what I've gone through is so different, and because I know and I've seen your lives versus through, that's the tricky thing about Facebook, is it's like, even if you're not friends with someone, you can look at a friend's page and then their friends' friends and friends and friends, and you can still see how everybody's doing. It's this like wormhole, right? You can get lost in forever. And
Yeah.
you see people that are married and happy with their kids and different things. And I was just like, this is not where I am, and you're not going to get where I am. And until my book came out, I was kind of keeping my journey private.
Mhm.
And, for whatever reason, I wouldn't call it shame, but I guess there was kind of a shame, because it was just like, I don't want you to feel bad for me or different things like that, because it's really a gut punch, nut punch, whatever you want to call it, when, even 8 years now, people are like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And like, I really appreciate it, but I'm okay. But
Yeah.
even then, like early on in the journey, you would tell people and they wouldn't believe you. I remember a couple times people were like, "No, you're too young, to be a widow." And you're like, "No, no, legit,
What?
I am." Yeah, yeah. And then I have this story in my book how like I went on this cruise for just to heal. I just had to get out. A couple months after he died, I just had been in the world of hospitals and clinics, and I just had to leave my house. So I went, and like before the boat took off, I got a drink like at the bar, and I told the guy, like, he's like, "Oh, well, what are you doing here?" The bartender. And I said, I'm here on a cruise. My husband died. And he's like, ah ha ha ha. And I was like, no, he really did. And he was just like, he thought, how people are like, I'm so mad at my husband, I could kill him. He
Mm.
thought it was like that. And I explained that it wasn't that way. He actually died, and that you should be careful. It's okay. I know you didn't know, but you should be careful, because you could really upset the wrong person. I was okay with it. I mean, I was totally offended, but I was nice about it. But but it's one of those things where it's just, people don't know what to say. They're just like, like it's just, and then trying to date like in the coming years and stuff. I
Mm.
don't have an ex-husband. I don't have someone I hate. I have someone I loved, and it's those tricky things where people really don't know what to say. So they either say nothing, and then you lose support in your life, which is unfortunately what happened in some ways for me, or people just say really inappropriate offhand comments. I actually had someone ask me this week, like, what's the worst thing someone can say to you when you're going through this? And I said, I understand. I know how you feel, or I know
Yep.
how you feel, or I get it. Cause you're like, no, you don't.
Like, yeah, it's from a good place, but at the same time, it's like, listen, that's not what people want to hear right now.
Yeah. And especially like for me to lose my spouse, it's not like, I am so sorry you lost your parent or your sibling or things like that. But this is the person who lived in my house with me every day, who I
Mm.
planned on having, 60 years with. It's completely different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you plan the whole future with them. You've got everything together. Oh, yeah, it's a completely different kind of pain.
Hmm. For me, so I'm very fortunate in that I was able to see his body fall apart. So it was a sensical death. I mean, not in the grand picture, but it made sense. You know, his body could only do so much. But I apologize. My dog is very antsy. But it's, you know, I was part of young widow groups and things trying to figure out who I was, what was going on. And there were people that like their person came home from Afghanistan and hung themselves or took too many pills or, you know, different things like that. There was one where this woman, her husband, hung himself in the garage. And I guess she was like 5'1" or something like that. And her 10-year-old that was really tall had to cut dad down. So it's, you know, it's different things like that. Or there was another one where it was her husband was like, I want you to, you know, come lay down with me, come take a nap. I'm so tired. And she knew he had been sad, but she didn't know until, you know, 10 minutes later after all that he had taken like a full bottle of pills and like that was it. It was too late. You couldn't do anything. And those are just horrific things. Whereas, you know, I literally had all the doctors tell me I'm sorry. They had tried everything. I signed the papers. We took him off life support. I knew what was happening. And I feel that I feel so blessed to have had that be my journey, that, you know, he didn't just not return home from work one day because, you know, something happened or he got hit by a car or whatever. But yeah, it's very, very difficult. And it's not in God's plan. I mean, it's not supposed to happen, right? And it's just, and the thing is, it also doesn't make sense why we're living in North America. I know you're in Canada, but I mean, I'm putting North America with it as well, that, and I'm here in Minnesota, that we are in, you know, the wealthiest nations and different things like that, compared to why are there people on the other side of the world that don't have water, that don't have, you know, food, all these different things. It doesn't make sense. And I don't think that it's God that chooses it. It's, we're all like this fallen world, and it's how, where we are, where we're born, we don't choose that, but we can choose what we do or we don't say. And I think that, you know, my mom has told me many times, like, you have a smart mouth. God puts a hand over your mouth sometimes. But yeah, it is. It's really tricky because I think, you know, any sort of mental health things like that, people just don't get that sometimes silence is like in the movie theater when before the movie starts, silence is golden. Like it really is, because it's better to, you know, not be able to know what to say and say, how can I help you? Or maybe ask someone, you know, what would someone that's closer to them, what would be appropriate to help, or, you know, things like that. That would be better.
Yeah, no, for me when I was going through it, like when people would always go like, you have to do this, you have to do that. I'm like, shut up, man. Like, I'm not gonna do that. And like
Yeah.
them trying to order you around, it makes you like want to do it less. You're like, ugh. It's like, I'd rather be in this puddle of despair than do what you're telling me to.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had, I'm not going to call them out. I talk about it in my book and I don't call them out there either. But I had someone very close to me tell me like 6 or 9 months after the death, like, you should just decide to be happy. And,
Oh.
you know, you should just, you know, just decide to be happy and move on and da da da. And I told their like significant other of, we're talking like 25 plus years, that they were like, oh, well, if I died, they, you know, or if they died, I'd be fine. And they were like, well, that's good to know. That's what they think.
Yeah, that's nice. Wow.
And it's, I know they were trying to be helpful in their own way, but it just hurt me so badly, because it was just like, you know what I'm going through in a way. You've seen it, you're part of it. Just be here and like not let me wallow, but like let me have my time. And I think that's the trickiest part, is whether it's depression or and depression is such a like black box, because it's so hard for people to understand. It's like the like it just made me think of like the president, like their briefcase, the football, you know, they have all their codes or whatever for when you need
Mhm.
to blow up the world or go to war or whatever that is. That it's, I mean, it really is this thing that like no one can get, no one can understand. And there's no, there's no time limit on it. And it's really, really, it's like I was thinking of, I have a box of Kleenex right here. So it's like a bottomless box of Kleenex, or like the magician that pulls the scarf that keeps going, because it's one of those things where it's, so I found out when I was 28, the summer before he got sick. He got sick in January of 2011. I like was driving home from work and I had this horrific pelvic pain and I didn't know what was going on. And I ended up having like ovarian cyst rupture on my ovaries and on my reproductive organs. And I literally was like, I write this in my book. I like wrote out the pain at work, and like, I lay down in bed, and like, when it finally subsided, I was like, did a baby come out? Like, I had that much horrific pain.
Wow.
And I learned that I had endometriosis, this reproductive health disease. It was going to happen again and again and again. And I went to the doctor and found out I might not be able to have kids. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like a lot to intake, right, in my 20s. So I got really depressed and I went on antidepressants, and I've actually been on them consistently since then, because the ones that I'm still on, like 10 years later, are migraine prevention. And I've had migraines for like 20, almost 30 years. So I'm fine with that, to be still on that, after all these years, because it's helping for another like physical health kind of thing. But I think that people don't understand that there are some really deep times in people's life where, luckily, I was like depressed because of that, but not like depressed. And I work with those people for work, for people that call into my work that ask for counseling and things like that. And I help connect them. But I mean, when you literally can't get out of bed, when no one's words matter, when it's not that and that's the tricky thing about mental health and serious mental illnesses and mental health, is nobody asks for it. It's just like getting cancer or something like that. Nobody asks for it. Nobody wants it. And you don't know what the next day is going to be like. You got kind of just have to ride the wave and hope that you don't get sucked down, in the tide and those different things. And I think that when people want to help, what's incredible now is there's so much information out there on these different things, that my hope is that, we're more of a technology literate world, that a lot of people can go towards that way, because there's so much information on how can I help someone? What can I say? What can I do? That hopefully it will, be more of a PC world of people connecting and having support. Because when you are in those places and people are like, come on, Harry, like, you should just think this, or come on, Rachel, you should be happy. You're like, you know,
Yup. Yup. I was
yeah,
in that spot. I was where like I couldn't get out of bed, no words mattered at all, and people were like, "Just be happier, man." It's like, "Oh, okay. I didn't even think of it. Thank you. I'm healed
yeah,
now." Like that's not how it works, man. But you're completely right. Like no one picks it, and I think that's another problem. Is like some people. There's people who mean well, but there's also people who go like, "Oh, you're just being lazy or just being weak." Like stop it. You can get out of this if you just put in a little effort. It's like, well, it's a lot harder than that, man. Like you gotta give people who go through stuff like that more credit than that. That's not fair. Saying you can
yeah,
just outthink your way through it. It's like in some cases, sure, if you're going through a depressive like day, like if it's just one small like small inconvenience in your life, if that's happening, sure. But when it's like every day nonstop, you're like hating yourself and you want to die, or like you don't see a point in life, just saying think out of it, that's not like you can't. There's so much more that goes into it.
yeah. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience, and and I think that's the tricky thing, where people lose support in their lives. I mean, my situation was different, but with exactly what you're talking about, it's people don't realize there's not, well, it is that way with grief. Everyone's journey is different, and that's the tricky thing. And you can't just fix it with a pill. You can't just fix it with a therapy session. It takes time and effort and hard work. And when you are really down, what I've known from other people's experiences and things, when you are really down, it's not, there's no timetable. It could take years. It could take all kinds of things. And it's tough.
Hmm. Yeah, straight up. Honestly, it that's that's all you can say about it. You're like, it's tough. It's a
Hmm.
process. In terms of your story, and I'm really glad you came on because this is like this is something that a lot of people go through, and just people don't talk about it very often. Like the whole widow situation, or like having a partner
Hmm.
that experiences cancer. Like we don't talk about that nearly enough. And I think as a result, it's hard to find resources and hard to find solutions for those people. So in your own situation, when you're 28, like what's going through your head when you get this news?
He's gonna die. Oh my God, he's gonna die. He's gonna die. And I like, what am I gonna do? He's gonna die. What am I gonna, what's gonna happen? I talk about this in the book. It's like, it's crazy because they tell you he's sick. First of all, he was like misdiagnosed with something else, and he's like, "At least I don't have the big C." And then we get a
Oh,
phone call, and it turns like he has. Then we go in the next day, and he gets a bone marrow biopsy, and I can just feel it. I just feel it, and I know he has it. So within 2 days, we find out that he has cancer, and the first thing they have you do, and I was 28 and he was 35, is if you are female, they have you harvest your eggs. If you're male, they have you freeze your sperm. And you're like, what? So I write about the experience, and it's like, we go to this clinic and there's, hi, I'm Katie. Here's your cup. And it's just like, we're trying to wrap our heads around the fact that he, has cancer. And it's like, you're just like numb, but you're on this adrenaline rush. Right. And then
right.
we go in this room and there's like a sink, a big leather chair, and a big rack of porn, and then and then like pumped loudly into the room with music you can't turn down, is like yakety yak, don't talk back, and like blue suede shoes. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever. It was like, is this like a Saturday Night Live episode? And as I was just, I write all this in the book, but I was like, here's porn, here's your one chance, look at it. And he's like, can you just go outside? And I was like, yes, please. So I remember I went and I
Oh
like
my
went
god.
outside and sat against the wall and like called a friend, and I was like, he has cancer. And they were like, what? And you're just like, every time you say it out loud, it becomes more real. But it was very bizarre because you're going through the motions of telling people. And it's kind of one of those things like when graduate from college, or you get your first big job, or you whatever, how you would, call people and you let them know and you're giving them the news and it's very surreal, or you get married, or you're whatever, all those types of things. It's one of those, and something's forever going to be different and it's never going to be the same. But with this one, people are just like, with this time, it's like people are like, oh no. Or,
Mm,
they can't filter it because they care about you and they care about them. So they're just saying like, no. And you're like, well, yeah. Yeah, and the tricky thing about when he was sick and when he was after he died is, it's like you spend a lot of time, even though it's you that got the direct hit, reassuring other people, I'm
yeah.
okay, or he's going to be okay. And not that that's wrong, it's just, it's interesting, you're in that space. But I had to learn how to navigate working full time. We had like a dog and two cats running back and forth between work and the hospital. And it was one of those things like, when you drive somewhere and you realize partway there, like you feel like you've been snapped out of a fog and you're like, oh my gosh, I got here safely and I wasn't even paying attention. It was
Mhm.
like that all the time, back and forth between work and there. And, I'd work 8 hours and then I'd run home and let the dog out. And then I'd go to the hospital for like 2 hours. And then I just feel like horrible having to leave him there and like, then go home and then, have just enough energy for like 10 minutes to pet the animals, then pass out, go to sleep, and then start the day over again. Um, and then besides that, having to figure out, insurance, treatment, diagnosis, talking to his employer about disability. So it's like you're taking on, you like have this superwoman cape, superman cape, depending on who you are, like flying behind you, and you don't even know that you have it there because you have to take care of 10,000 things that were not your responsibility, let alone all of a sudden you're like team manager, cheerleader, all these things. And within an illness like this, you don't have the luxury of thinking, besides thinking they're going to die, they're going to die, they're going to die. Your mind quickly flips like a light switch to, um, they're not going to die. This is going to be fine. This is my life. This is what it is. This is my new normal. And like, you don't have the luxury of taking care of yourself. So some days you might not, get up, you're so tired, you might not shower, you go to work, things like that. He was sick 2 years and 3 months, so 27 months. And I was blessed that my parents came and lived with me, took shifts, they've been married now 55 years, but 45 years at that point. And they would just be like, they'd spend a day or two together and then switch. So I was able to work, and, at like 28, you never really think that your parents are going to, live with you. Like, you're like, oh God, my privacy. Like, I don't want dad to fold my underwear when he's doing laundry. And like,
Yeah.
all these different things, but like, you just don't care because you need help. You realize you don't care. You need help. When my late husband came home from the hospital after 5 weeks and had lost like 35 pounds and was so weak, he needed someone to cook for him, or if he got a fever, he needed to be able to go to the hospital right away. And he had treatment several days a week, and, all those things that I couldn't do with working full time. But within doing all of that, I had to learn so many things so I have this. So to back up, I've written Wife, Widow, Now What, available on Amazon. And so Wife, Widow, Now What, but I actually have, when I went through treatment, when it started with him with diagnosis, I have all the questions you can ask. When I try to figure out insurance, because you're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to afford this? What are we going to do? It's like, chill. You most likely have a copay. You have a deductible. These are how they work. This is what it means. So when I'm navigating it all in real time in my story, I write it all out, how you navigate it. So when your person gets sick, the first thing you think is like, they're going to die. I don't want them to die. The second thing is, get them treatment. And then you have to, unfortunately, deal with financial and all those different things. So I have in here when they're, and it's, I wrote it specifically from a significant other to others, but it can be any sort of, and I feel like I'm talking way too fast. It can be any sort of catastrophic illness or things like that. But you really do have to think, maybe I can't afford all these things. The other person is not working. What are we going to have? What are we going to cut back on? So I have like budgeting, going through all that. But here in the US, we have Caring Bridge, which is a website. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a website where basically, instead of people inundating you with, hi, how are they doing? Da, 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 da. It's like a newsletter you update, like it's like a medical website for loved ones. So then they get in their email box, if they sign up for updates, they can click on it. It goes to the webpage. So I have the Caring Bridge post, my Facebook post, all in chronological order with all these resources, how to navigate all of it. And then also have, so it's like all of that interspliced together. And then later when Instagram came to be, I have that, after he died. And then after he died, I have, finances again, because unfortunately, when your person passes away, you might not be able to afford where you were living. And, unfortunately, you might have to ties down, all those different things to look at, the dynamics, holidays, anniversaries, like your friend you were talking about that their parent died, when you got to do something to change things. If you had traditions, you have to make new traditions. You need to distract yourself, have a, happy anniversary, all those types of things that no one really tells you how to do. There is not a guidebook. There's not a map of anything. So this is the first ever memoir interspliced with how to get through the medical world ever that I wrote. So it's pretty cool. It's very exciting.
That's awesome. So
yeah,
how that it's so much. Like, how, when you were going through it, was there anything guiding you, or was this just a bunch of trial and error that you were experiencing?
Oh, it was just a bunch of trial and error with minefields blown up in my face.
Holy shit.
So the thing is and like, so I, close to my heart, of course, with this huge undertaking I'm doing, because it's very scary. I set a personal goal of 60,000 to try to raise for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I have an amazing group of people, team members behind me doing this, an amazing mentor, Robert, who's been through all this stuff himself, had cancer when he was like 30 years ago. So I have all these people that have been through this, that get it, that are supporting me, that are like, yeah, get this out to the world. And I want to get this book in like every person's hand. So it's just when you're in it, you're just trying to survive, but you really need to know you have to do these things. You have to look at these things because you can't get an eviction notice or not afford your mortgage or, all these different things. And luckily, like I'm a research nerd, I've always loved helping people. So I spent like 18 hours just looking for extra money for, gas cards, groceries, different things like that. We were blessed to have a little bit of a cushion with like his late dad's trust fund to be able to help him with different things. We were very, very fortunate in that. But a lot of people don't have those extra things. So in my book, I have this like 2 full pages on organizations that have funding for different things, depending on your diagnosis or those different things. So here, I'm trying to get help getting my dog out that's been scratching at the door. Um, so, what's amazing is even just in 10 years, like 10 years doesn't seem like that much, but there are so many more available resources now than there were. So with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, they give us like $100 grant every now and then, which, helps tremendously with gasoline or different things. You don't think about the fact that when your person's at the hospital all the time, you're gonna have to pay for a parking pass and meals at the cafeteria and all that adds up really quickly. So you do need, you don't budget for those things. You do need extra help. So I have all those different organizations you can hit up for support and things like that. And what's really cool is in the book I have where like a budget chart where you can actually write it. And then if you buy the ebook version, you can actually click on the hyperlink and it'll take you straight to those pages. But even just like support, now there are so many Facebook groups and young cancer groups and, different things like that. It's pretty amazing that there's that out there. To be able to help. So, I did have to kind of learn that from scratch. And I think there probably were people and different resources that could have helped me, but I didn't know what they were. Because I looked really hard. I would stay up, when you stay up reading on your phone until your eyes bleed. There were smartphones back then. I think I still had like the little quirky keyboard that flips open, things like that. We didn't have our smartphones like we do today, which makes it sound like the 1800s or whatever, but even in 10 years. So yeah, I really did learn it all by myself. And then after he died, I have people that have asked me like, what kind of support were there not people out there? There were young widows and different things, widowers, but again, they had totally different experiences. A lot of them had children. I didn't have that. I was alone, family in different states, people not here. You go to dinner with a friend or a friend comes over, but then they leave and you're left like, and you're just like your puddle of tears again. And my book, I think it's quite interesting because say it's like 2 months out after he died and I'm like, oh, today, I'm feeling so much better. I like went to the hardware store and I, bought this and then I put together this doghouse and, I have the yard ready for spring and da 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 da. And then the next day I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't stop crying. So you can see like how much of a roller coaster it really is. And I think that that's really helpful for people to see every day is different. And you just like, you got to hang on to your surfboard because you can't let it suck you under or whatever, or you have to, whatever it is, you have to hang on to your Wilson volleyball, that's your only person in Castaway.
Yep.
Or those types of things. And then eventually you get to the point where you can let that volleyball, you can let Wilson go, but it takes quite a while. But yeah, it really was me trying to navigate all of it. And it was really hard and really ugly for a lot of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you were saying like you were always like in a frantic like hospital to work to feeding the pets, doing this, doing that. And I think you briefly covered this. Was there any point where you could do stuff for yourself in terms of like self-care? Anything at all?
Yeah. So I edited the book myself like 8 times and I had a professional editor edit it as well. And I think she was like in her 60s and it just happened to be a God thing because she's like, my husband when she sent it back to me, she's like, my husband's had cancer for like 11 years. And I was just like, wow, someone that was reading it had been through that. And she's like, I'm not sure about all the concert parts and stuff you have in there, but obviously they were important to you. So keep them in there. But so I live in the Twin Cities here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And to those of you that don't know, it's a music mecca. So unfortunately, our beloved Prince died years ago, but this is a huge place for live music. And in the 20 years that I've lived here, I've been to like 180 shows or something like that. So I still went to concerts. I still did those things. And I even wondered at the time, would people judge me, things like that. But you can't care because you have to get out and you have to do your own thing. And a lot of people think as the caregiver, there's a lot of stigma associated with, oh, they're the sick person and you're doing that and you're, doing this. And so I actually changed all the names in my book except my own. So like Grayson was not my late husband's name, which I talk about in the book, simply because I had a very, very toxic mother-in-law and I haven't talked to her forever and I don't want her to sue me.
Right.
So, but it's like, I remember one time I had a friend, I talk about this in the book. She brought me like a care package and his mom walked in the room and she was like, you're taking care of you're doing this and you're going shopping when he's fighting for his life. And it was like, excuse me, like, no, this is for me. Someone's helping me, so you do have to reach out and let people know, like, I'm just having a really hard time. And you have to like be able to strip off the layers of the armor you put on, because especially what I did, the second year of his illness, I switched jobs. So I was working in mental health, going out in the community. My first year that he was sick, what I had done for years is I worked at a mental health assisted living, taking people with serious and persistent mental illnesses to activities and different things like that. So they don't know about your personal life. And then the other one is I was like a case manager going into people's homes, helping them advocate, doing anything and everything, people that were seriously mentally ill as well. So it's like, with that, I had more breathing room because I was driving from client's home to home. And in between, I could call the doctors and find out how he was doing or talk to him and things like that. But this whole time, you have to shelve this life of, you can't think, oh my gosh, my person's are they going to die? Are they well? What's going on? They're having their bone marrow biopsy today. What's going to come? What's going to come of this? What's going on? You just have to like deny all of it, lock the door until you're done with work, and then you can get back to work. And it was pretty insane because it's just like, I've learned really well how to compartmentalize. And that's something that I was forced to do. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have the luxury of being able to, I would talk with my coworkers and different things at the first job about it. At the second one, because it was mainly me and my case files in my car, I depended on friends and family to talk to and things like that. But even then, when you do talk, you talk about the patient. How are they doing? So you kind of have to force yourself to talk about yourself because that's not what you're focused on. You're so focused on them. Are they going to live? What do they need? All these types of things. So it's really difficult to figure out how to carve out time for yourself because they're your person, and not that like you can't live without them. Ultimately, obviously I did because my husband died, but when it's your job to be the healthy person mentally, physically, and the strong one out of the two, because the other one can't be at that time, you don't really think a lot about yourself, if that makes sense. So I did have friends come to the hospital and like we'd go sit at the cafeteria and have dinner when he was hospitalized, or come over for a movie night or do different things like that. The summer when he was in remission and he did well, we went to like Las Vegas for the young cancer survivor conference. And I went to some different silent retreats. I escaped from a Buddhist retreat. That's a funny story in my book. But because I was just too tired and I kept falling asleep on my yoga mat and like hitting the floor.
Oh my
Because it was
God,
like,
yeah, I can imagine.
even with that, like you never have respite. And even when you nap, like it's never enough. But it's one of those things where it's like, I don't have children, but you know, how you just hear how people are like on autopilot with no sleep and things like that. It was pretty crazy. And then even just a year or two after he died, it probably took me a full year to catch up on sleep, to get my body to recharge, even past when I had a hysterectomy and had to go through all the physical healing of that. But to get back where I felt like an actual human that wasn't on a hamster wheel without a wheel anymore, it probably did take like a full year, because it just drains you so much. You're going, 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 going. And even then, like, it was just really bizarre to not have to go to the hospital, to not have to worry about someone's blood pressure or levels or whatever. And then I really missed all the like nurses and all the people that I knew, even like the girl like in the cafeteria or the parking pass girl or like the people you'd see every day. All these people become part of your ecosystem. So when your person dies, you lose all of that as well. So it was just kind of an interesting combo of that. But it was difficult because you do get lost in so much focus being on the other person, which is what it should be, to how am I going to take care of myself? So it might be like getting a cup of tea and listening to a CD you like on the way to the hospital, or, you know, things like that. But yeah, it's really tricky to try to take care of yourself.
Hmm. It's strange, the whole idea that you giving yourself like a little gift basket, or you going to a concert to take time out of, or to get your mind out of all the craziness. It's so strange that that's considered selfish.
Yeah.
It's such a weird concept. Like I need to make sure I'm mentally healthy as well as my husband like doing his thing, and then that makes you a selfish person. It's so weird.
It is. It's really weird. So when I published my book last fall, I actually it didn't occur to me until I like had clicked the button on Amazon. It was like out there to the world.
Mm.
Like I had probably like a 5 minute mini panic attack of like, am I going to feel really shitty going back into the cancer world because I'm so spaced out from it for years? Am I like, this is a really tough way to be. And I did 2 half marathons for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's team in training, where it's like months of training along with people raising money. And it's like a physical, like I started from scratch. I mean, I walked my dog, but like you train to be able to do this. So I'm walking, I was a walker, not a runner. So I'm training all these things, and I'm, you know, having these relationships with people that I still have, um, you know, that get it, that get where you are. So I'm doing all these different things to take care of myself in that way. But you know, in different ways. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with this. Within those things, yeah. Taking care of yourself, um, you do really worry about, for what you don't want to worry, but you worry like, what are people gonna think? Like
Yeah,
in a way, you don't give a shit because you're doing your thing and you have to. I remember I went to a concert. I went to like a Miranda Lambert concert
nice.
that was like 60 miles away or something. And I got a hotel and I couldn't find anybody to go with me. And I'm like, I'm going. And my mom was there helping take care of my husband. And I had like a tank top. I'm like 29, right? I had like a tank top and jeans on. My mom's like, some young man's going to hit on you in that shirt like that. And my husband's just like laughing. And I'm like, whatever, I'm going to go. And I just like sat there with like my beer in my seat, you know, dancing by myself. And then, you know, went back to the hotel, fell asleep, and came home. And it was just like, no one could understand how much I needed that, you know, how
Right.
much you just need that space and that time. Where I remember being there and thinking, you know, first of all, he didn't like country music. So, first of all, like he would hate this, but thinking like, oh, yeah, he's there, he's in remission, mom's with him, different things like that. But like, I can breathe. I just have like 12 hours. I can breathe. I know he's sick. I know I love him. I know he's my person, but that's not my life right now. And I think that that's the tricky thing, is people feel, um, people just have perceptions of things. And that's the trickiest thing with something like this, is you don't know what you're doing until you go through it. Um, so I remembered. So jumping back in the cancer world, I, was reaching out to different people that I wanted to be able to help with my book. And there's this organization called JAX, Cancer Caregiver Coalition, here in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. And it's based on someone who his late wife, when she was sick, a friend was like, how can we take care of you? And he was like, what? And they're like, no, you, the caregiver. So it's this group of guys that get together and have, even virtually now with COVID, like Thirsty Thursday, they do like, went to like meaty things, like a, meat packing something, or, stuff like that. And so I've actually taken it on as kind of like a Jill with a Jack, and I do trivia night, once a month. We're going to move it to twice a month and things like that. And it's just, these people that are going through this, you need a distraction. You have to have something to pull you out of it, even if it's just an hour a week. I read like silly, stupid trivia questions. One of them was like, what, there's like this random statue in like Brazil or Bolivia or something of some man eating babies. Like, what I mean? It's like, what country is the statue in, or what is whatever in? And you're thinking of that, or music trivia, or what year was this baseball, how many Super Bowls has, Tom Brady won, or whatever that is. Things that are like that stupid, that silly, you need that hour of nonsense to step away, to take that time. So it's cool. There's this organization doing things like that, and I recommend in my book, not only things to do for yourself, but when people want to help, the specific tasks to give them, because you might not know what to do. Like, let somebody shovel your driveway, let somebody cut your grass, let somebody go to Target, let somebody, do these things. Because you have to use all your reserves, like that extra engine that you have on your plane. Like, you got to keep it in check. You can't use it, because if the whole rest of the airplane blows, you're going to need that. You're going to need that.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. Yeah. No, you definitely need that hour, those 12 hours you had, that's big time. That's important. That you get your mind to reset almost. I can only imagine. I mean, yeah, it's being in the concert area with that music blaring, with everyone who's like-minded in the sense that they like country, and just for like 12 hours you're focused on Miranda Lambert's amazing vocals as opposed to the insanity going on. Like, you need that stuff. And that's why, again, like I hope the narrative changes in the sense that people who are going through things like that, they go, hey, listen, I need a me day. I hope it's met with, yeah, of course, as opposed to, why? Like, your partner's struggling. It's like, well, Jesus, like, I can't do everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have, it takes up like 6 or 7 pages in my book. I actually made a playlist of everything that were my top songs I listened to per year during that whole thing, because music is such a huge part of me. And the biggest thing is, like, if you go to a concert, like, just to get lost in it is amazing. Like, going to see Ryan Adams, or First Ave is one of our biggest clubs. It's so weird to think of this now, everything's closed in COVID, but to be able to like just stand in a crowd of people and just like lose yourself and be listening to the music, and everything else fades away. Sometimes that's all that you need. Sometimes that's all that's there. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and like, there really is so much sad music out there. Like, there, whether it's Ed Sheeran or whatever it is, there's a lot of really sad stuff out there. So it's like, you also have to be careful of what you watch, what you're inputting. I know, even for myself now, when I have this toxic person in my life that's going to be there for quite a long time. And, I battle with that, trying to be positive, trying to be me going forward, because this person unfortunately cannot not be a part of my life for quite some time. But it's when, so I, as of like 5.5 years ago, I got a job at this great new place. And then I'm like, oh, my life is starting over. And 2 weeks after that, I had dental surgery and had antibiotics that ripped up my GI tract. So now I have IBS and a colon disease. And luckily I'm in remission, but I get sick every now and then. And it was like 1.5 years of very serious illness. So whether I like don't feel well one day, or am stressed out about the situation or whatever. It's like I find that I can't watch shows that are like very like a lot of drama because it just like it like it gets those emotions. So like you have to watch, like after he died, I remember just watching, Frasier and Friends and Everybody Loves Raymond and just belly laughing and
Mhm.
realizing like whether you have, serious depression or whatever's going on, you have to expose yourself, or grief and you're in this bad place, to things that are going to kind of bring about, even if you're like, yeah, that are going to bring about someone else acting like an idiot and making something funny. Because it's important to surround yourself with that, whether it's the media, what you're watching, what you're listening to, who you're surrounding yourself with. It's really important that you do that. And I actually went off social media completely for like 6 months during my tough widow times. And it helped so much because it was like, I don't want to see, the super pretty girl from high school that's on like, oh, she's pregnant again for like the third time and she's so happy. And I'm like, I have no uterus. My person is dead. And I'm trying to afford my house and working 3 part-time jobs, all
Yeah.
these things. Like it really, you do have to shut that off because it doesn't matter how hard that you try or how much self-confidence you have. It is really hard not to compare yourself to other people where we're at these days. So I think it's really important to feed yourself positivity, even if you don't feel like it, because it is one of those things where laughter being contagious, positivity can be contagious. And one of the things that my book really equips you with is like, holy shit, she went through horrificness and she's okay. She turned out okay. And I preface it like faith is a really big thing for me. It might not be for you. I talk about it in this book, but this book, I have it for whether, you're gay, straight, transgender, whatever. This book is applicable to anyone and everyone. And that's the thing about cancer is, in any sort of catastrophic illness, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor or where you live, what you're doing, it's going to get somebody, it's going to get you. And especially right now with all the people that are losing loved ones to COVID and they can't be with them, you need to be equipped with things that help you figure it out. And I'm really proud that my book does that.
Hmm. Yeah, you need an outlet in like anything, like those stupid shows, that stupid music. That's I like a lot of people I know, like when they're sad, they play the most depressing garbage I've ever heard in my life. I'm like, that cannot be helping you. Like
Yeah.
music like I wanna die. It's like, how is that gonna help you get out of this like bad spot you're in? Or like you're watching a sad show where someone dies. It's like that you're not helping anything.
Being a mental health professional, I totally had like a mini freak out when that show 13 Reasons Why came out on
Oh my god.
Netflix
Oh
and
my
different
god.
things like that. And it's just like, don't give kids ideas.
I remember because I refused to watch that freaking show, but
I didn't watch it either. I read the premise. I read the whole thing on like Wikipedia,
yeah,
so I know what it was. But yeah,
I was like, I'm good, because I just did not need that. But when I heard about the last episode, I was like, are you? Pardon my language, but like, are you fucking kidding me? Like
hmm
you're like Netflix was like, good job, guys. That's a great episode to put out for young teenage girls or boys who are watching this, who are so easily influenced. Like, oh my goodness gracious, no, stop. You can't.
yeah,
And their excuse or something, I could be misquoting, but they were like, it's to raise awareness, and I'm like, there are so many other ways you can do that than giving them a way to do it.
I don't know if you saw commercials for it. It was on for a while. There's a show on Facebook, like Facebook TV or whatever they have, and on Hulu, I kept seeing the commercials. It was I just lost what it was called, but it was with Elizabeth Olsen, like the other Olsen sister, where
Hmm.
she plays a widow. And this was while I was writing my book. And I just was like, you don't know, you're just the actress. Like,
Yeah.
I'm writing the real thing. You have no idea. And it's just, to me, it was infuriating. And it's funny that it was infuriating. And when I was infuriated by it, I even thought it was comical, but it was just like, no, I've contacted different people. I have a couple different Amazon Studios people that are like I'm loosely talking to, but unless I have an agent, which I can't afford, I would love my book to be made into a movie or something, because I've been told by different people it's a love story and a toolbox of how to navigate and all these things, which is it is, but it's just interesting to hear how other people read it and portray it. But my experience of like cancer was Julia Roberts in like the 80s dying young, where this guy is, she's taking care of him and he's like crawling on the floor and puking. And so I kind of expected that when my husband had chemo, and it's like, no, they give you Benadryl as a pre-med, and you might feel a little nauseous, but you're pretty much okay, and you eat your cookies and your juice box, and then you go home and you're really tired and you feel shitty, but and then other things happen, but things are not what they are. And I just remember seeing previews for this and I was like, I refuse to watch this show. But that's even at that, it seemed glossed over. But yeah, it's really interesting how things get portrayed, and I wish there would be more on what it really is. I had the joy and opportunity to go to NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness here in the States, their annual conference years ago in Chicago. And it was really cool because like the expo that they had in the little conference center, I bought books from people that had like serious and persistent mental illnesses, like their memoirs and things. And it was really cool to read it. Like one guy, who had to be like literally locked up in a psych ward and different things like that. And it was just like, this was my life. This is called 60 Days or something. And it was just like, to be able to see someone's raw experience. And that's the thing about my book is it's not, I don't sugarcoat anything. I mean, it's a love story, but it's like, I give you the nitty gritty and the awfulness of it because I think that that's powerful to know what's real. And to see like, I went, and then like how to go back up. But it took me years to get to where I am now. I mean, it's been April 21st. It will have been 8 years since he died. And, if I have his name tattooed on my wrist, and I say this in the book as well, and I didn't have family members in my life and people that knew him, and I didn't have pictures, I literally might not believe that this was my life because I'm so distanced from it. And every time I would work on my book again and again and again, it would distance me as well. Like it feels like it's high school or something, like it's farther away. And, I have like these, big blessed tattoos and different things on my body to mark, strength, faith, courage, where I've been, where all those things. But it's when you go through something that traumatic, you do have PTSD. Like I totally had PTSD writing it. It was a labor of love and PTSD. And it was so hard and so heartbreaking to write it on paper. So I would write for like 6 hours and then cry for like 20 or 30 minutes. And it's just, you're just grieving for this person. And it's amazing that this person was you. And I think that one of the most powerful thing people can do when they're going through hard stuff is just write it out. Even if it's just, something small or something little. So I had this healing blog on Facebook, where it was a smaller group of my friends, and I would just bleed on paper and just write, what I was feeling or what I was going through. And it would be a simple little bit, but then just getting it out there, I would feel better. So here's one, like tree branches sway. Let me do the math. 4 months after he died. Tree branches sway back and forth, winds that have been howling quiet down, darkness gives to light, starting over, sleeplessness bites like a bee sting, calm, quiet, loud, desperation, laughter, exhaustion, smiles, numbness, memories, uncertainty, starting over. The tree dries out in the sun and the buds wait to grow for the seasons to change and the cycle of life to continue. So it's just little, and later on with Instagram, I would just throw this stuff up underneath a picture. I took a picture of whatever and I just throw it on there, but just putting it out there and having it in the world. Here's another one. So silence is the bitterness that calls the beast. Silence can also be solace that protects the bird with broken wings, giving it time to heal. Either way, silence can be stretched long and wide, leaving one feeling so isolated, alone, and numb inside. I cannot wait for the solace and silence of my beloved snow to fall. It provides beauty, wonder, and calmness for me, and it helps make sense of the world, time, and the greater purpose of it all. This pending and already begun holiday season, so this is December, has begun to rip the wings of this bird. The newness, the silence, and the numbness doesn't provide solace at all. It beats the drum of the weight of this year, the loss, the pain, and the aching tiredness of my exhaustion inside and out, without ever even speaking a word aloud. So it's like, however you funnel it out there, get it out,
Mhm.
because the toughest thing is, call somebody that you can trust and just talk. I think the most valuable thing we can do with someone going through a hard thing is to listen. It's free, it doesn't cost anything. Especially right now, so many people are isolated. If they're single, they're isolated, they're by themselves, they might not have family near them, things like that, which when someone is really down can be dangerous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, however you can funnel and channel it out, is beneficial. And I had someone ask me the other day, like, what did you get out of all of it? Like where you are now. And I think the biggest thing is we all, like people mined in the 1800s, like in the Yukon and things like that. They would put all of it on the line to have their little pack, be freezing. They don't have, the Gore-Tex, all this stuff, boots we have these days. They'd be freezing, leaving their women and children, to go mine in the middle of blizzards up this hill, hoping not to die, just looking for nuggets of gold, right? And when we go through really difficult things, just know that what you're going through, it doesn't make sense. Most likely it doesn't make sense. It's not pretty. It's really difficult. But more than likely, a few nuggets of gold are coming out of this experience that are going to make you into who you're going to be later in life, or they're going to provide you with the insight to be able to help somebody else later. And I
Mm.
think that that's the really difficult thing is, I had no idea I was going to go into advocacy like this and write a book and go through all of these things. And yeah, of course, not everybody's going to do that. But now I'm wanting to help people and raise money for blood cancer because people helped me. And, if you are so, and, unfortunately, a really tricky thing right now with COVID is there are a lot of people who are trapped in domestic abuse situations and things like that. But people go beyond um, those things like that. And they might go on to have a job where they help other people or, whatever that is. There are ways we can take our experiences, no matter your age, to help other people and say, I've been there, I've done it. And, our situations are not the same. And I'm not trying to say I get it or I know, but I've been there and it is hard, and let me help you. And that's the most powerful thing that I think we can do in
Yeah,
our humankind.
I agree. Yeah, that's huge. Did you find a little bit of closure when you wrote that book?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was quote unquote fully healed, but this allowed, it's like it was inside of me. And this allowed, like, now it's out. It's out. It's almost, so in my book, I have part one is his illness. Part two is Rachel 2.0, where it's like I had to reboot my life like a computer. Um, but because I had all the memories, all of it in there, and it took a really long time to not, I would just cry because it took me a really long time not to see the sick him. Um, because that's what I saw for years. So this allowed me to be able to, like, as cliche and cheesy as it sounds, like, break out of my cocoon and become a butterfly. And even though I'd successfully moved on in life in all these different ways, I wasn't holding my story in. It's out now. It's raw. It's tough, but it's out now. And I think that did provide me with complete closure.
Yeah. Yeah, that weight off your shoulders is a beautiful, beautiful feeling. It's finally off. You're like, oh, it's like you lost all like 50 pounds. You're like, whew,
Yeah.
I could fly if I tried.
75.
75, yeah. Whew. Man.
Yeah.
Um, oh shoot. Now I'm forgetting what I was gonna say. Oh,
That's
here we
okay.
go. I got it. Sorry, I do this for most episodes and I gotta figure that out.
That's okay.
But in terms of, because you've said that you're like fully healed now and like you've kind of distanced yourself from the whole experience in a way. Do you still experience things on like anniversaries, like April 21st? Like, is that still a reoccurring thing for you?
I used to take the day off of work and do something fun with someone that knew him as well. This year I'm not. It'll be the 8th year. I actually, so when I turned, like I said, I'm about to be 39. When I turned 37, I had like a full out, um, I completely didn't expect it. And it was at like, so my birthday's April 19th. It was, so 2 days before because he died on the 21st. I want to say it was maybe at like noon or something that day. I just lost it. Like I was working and just had to like, I'm connected to a phone all the time that rings into my ear and a headset. And I just had to like stop, like go out of the mode to take calls because I just lost it and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized when he died, he was 37 and I was surpassing him. So actually going in, he died in 2013, going into 2014, I had panic attacks at the end of the year because I was moving into a new year without him for the first time since I was 19. I was like, I can't leave him behind. I can't leave him behind. And it was just this horrifying panic that didn't make sense, but to me it totally did, and it was awful. So to realize I had surpassed him, it was kind of like I left him in the dust, and it was more, how unjust is this? I've known this all these years, but how like not fucking fair is this? This is awful.
Mhm.
um so yeah, it's interesting, and I say grief bites you in the butt because things come up. I have the song "The Luckiest" tattooed on, like the words "The Luckiest" with a butterfly on either side tattooed on one of my feet. That was our song by Ben Folds.
Great song.
We danced to it at our wedding, and I played it for him as he's dying. I had the Heaven playlist and all these things. And we both loved Ben Folds. And that was one of the concerts I went to actually, with a friend, while he was ill. But I don't listen to Ben Folds. I totally could. I'm in a good place, but I'm like, I can't. I don't want to. And like even in high school, I like Ben Folds 5 with 500 Angry Dwarfs and all that kind of stuff, the fun songs. But I can't. And I'm sure that I could, but it's funny because I don't want to. It's kind of like I've been tempted at times, but I almost feel like it's not fair to him. And what's really funny is you have these different things happen. And I talk about this in the book where like we watch The Office every Thursday, and he worked nights the first whole of our 8 years before he got sick. So we would record it back when you actually used a VHS tape and stuff, and
Mm.
then watch it on the weekends when we were together. And then we watched it together when, he was at home during his illness and disabled at home. And then it was like the show was wrapping up for good. And I remember watching the season series finale and having like sitting in bed and being like slightly panicked because he wasn't there to watch it. And then I was like, are you kidding? He's got like unlimited TV in heaven. He's not missing anything. But it's those things that come up that are really weird
Mhm.
because you're used to these rituals or traditions or things that you do. Um, and like I remember, so the hardest year for me was the year after he died. And so Christmas 2014, I went and had Christmas with my siblings and their families, 2 out of my 3 siblings. And I was just had like a bottomless cup of hot chocolate with amaretto in it. And I just like had a constant buzz all the time. And I'm not a drinker by any means, but it was like everyone's with their happy family. I'm feeling this void. I like dated way too much for like a year or so during all of this stuff, like just the wrong people because I was continuing to look for
Mm.
validation because I was so lonely. And I mean, you don't make the smartest choices when you're going through stuff like that, but it's not the authentic, real you anyway. But it's just those things like you just want to numb it and you have to be really careful because luckily I didn't do anything dangerous, but we all make, when we go through really hard stuff, sometimes we make not as smart choices. But yeah, just going through those things, those traditions, those anniversaries, they are really hard. I do post on our wedding anniversary and his birthday and his death anniversary. I will post, it's been 8 years, da 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 da, with a picture. And I've been told by like his cousins and different people, like that just means the world to them because it doesn't, they know I don't forget them, but to know that, to
Mm,
see that despite where I am and moved on and things like that, that I still recognize that it's really important to those people that were there as well. And like, we got married in a old historic cave here, but then like during prohibition, it's where, you know, the gangsters hung out and danced and drank and all that kind of stuff. And um you know, I'll send a text to my parents and my siblings, and you know, like today would have been, and what's crazy is I'm only 39, and like this year I would have been married 17 years because I was 22. So to think back on that, even though he's been gone 8 years, it's like holy cats, because I remember being 22 and being like, yep, when it's 50 years I'll be 72. Like you still think of all those things every year even though you're moved on and they're gone. So I'll send a text to my parents, like, you know, today would have been our 16th anniversary. And my dad's like, yep, remember being in the cave. So it's just those connections
mhm.
that are important to kind of recognize those. But yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't matter how much time has passed. Sometimes things still do hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important because I feel like sometimes for anything really, when you get to that anniversary experience or you get to that like, oh, it's been 10 years since I had, you know, an attempt at ending my life or my partner passed, and you do have a negative reaction to it, some people almost feel like it's a step backwards as opposed to like that's just part of the process.
Yeah, you actually need to give into it. You need to give
Mhm.
into it. You need to do all that. One of my best friends, her brother-in-law, and she actually she was someone that I was, and she knows this. This isn't a secret, but like she didn't know how to adequately support me during my toughest grief time. So she just kind of gave me space, and I wish that she would have been more in there. And
Mm,
you know, she's one of my closest, most supportive people in my life now. And I mean, we were still great friends then, but her brother-in-law took his life, and this was 2 years after my late husband died. And I was one of the first people she reached out to. She's like, what do I do? How do I support my husband? Da 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 da. And I love being able to, as awful as my experience was, I love being able to be that touchstone person that people reach out to because they're like, I'm not afraid to ask Rachel because she's been there and she knows. You know, so I just gave recommendations, or you could try this, you could try that. Obviously our experiences are very different from someone taking their life, but yeah, you really have to give into it and just be okay with it. And I highly recommend, when you know there's a hard anniversary coming up, you ask for support, you let people know, and you take the day off of work, because you should have that time that you don't know what's going to happen. You know, are you going to break down? Are you going to be fine? Sometimes, because it's been so many years now, you know, sometimes I would take the day and I'd be totally fine. And it would just be like, this is really weird. You know, it's been 4 years since he died. This is just bizarre. You know, that this is space and time. But one of the most powerful things I think people can do is I have all of these timers on my phone. I have like a ridiculous amount of um, all these alarms that I have set on my
mm,
phone, and they're to check in with people. So because we're so busy all the time, it's like text. I have another friend named Rachel. So it's like text Rachel or check in with her, or, you know, check in with Lauren, call my mom, call my sisters, you know, these different things, because time just flies by and you don't want to lose those relationships. And we do really have to work on them. So I think that the most powerful thing you can do is, if you know someone's going through something hard, remind yourself, set a timer, remind yourself to text them, you know, saying, hey, thinking of you, it's the equivalent to like 60 text for them. Just to know that someone gives a shit is a really big deal.
yeah, yeah, you get that text and it's like your mood doesn't completely change, but it's like a punch of serotonin. You're like, "Oh, wow. People care about me. It's great." It
Yeah,
takes like
it's very
30
needed.
it takes like 30 seconds to just send it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of guilty in that sense where like sometimes I'm so overcome with my own stuff or like work or when I was in school or anything, like I wouldn't take that time, and then when I did, my friends would be like, wow, that thank you so much, like no one's done that today. And it's like you that's when you realize you're like, you know, it takes minimal effort to really change somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes such a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
I had I posted that like I need support, I need help. At one point during my grief journey on Facebook, and a friend came over and she took me for a walk. Yeah, like a dog. She was like, "Come on, Rachel, let's go outside." And we actually left the dog inside and we went for a walk, and like that's what I needed.
Yeah.
We need people to, get in our face and coax us out of what we're going through and support us and be there. And we do have to pony up. Don't be ashamed. Ask for help, because more than likely you're going to help someone as well. It's going to come full circle at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Bodies are bodies. They can only do so much. So at some point, you might have the flu and need someone to bring you, soda and, ginger ale and crackers or whatever that is, or your cold medicine, or, God forbid, a catastrophic illness or whatever that is. But more than likely, there's going to be reciprocity. So totally ask for that help.
Yeah.
And what's tough is people feel helpless. The biggest thing I've been told is like, I didn't know how to help you. I didn't know what to do. So letting people know what you need is, and I have a list of all, like I was saying, a list of all those things to tell people you need help with, like just bringing someone a meal when you're so tired and taking care of someone and you don't have energy. That's an insane amount of help for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even like on the other end of that, be open about being helpless about it, or like not knowing what to
Mm-hmm.
do. Be like, hey, what can I do? Because I don't know. As opposed to saying like, I think this is what you want me to tell you.
Yeah.
That would be big.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where can people listening to this, where can they find your book or you?
Yeah. So wife, widow, now what? So it's WWNW. Well, wife, widow, now what? I had so many different titles I thought of for this book, but it's really like wife, widow, now what the F am I going to do? Right.
Yeah.
You can find it on Amazon in paperback or Kindle version. And you can find me on Wife, Widow, Now What on Facebook or Instagram. And Harry will have links to connect us under his stuff. But if you are able, if you can donate for blood cancer, I would greatly appreciate it. It's just kind of ridiculous. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, but every 3 minutes, someone is diagnosed with blood cancer.
Mm.
It's the number one childhood cancer. 80% of, yes, it's great that we, can cure people most of the time and people go on to live healthy lives, but 80% of those childhood cancer survivors go on to have serious illnesses. So there's still not drugs and treatments out there that make it a-okay for the rest of your life. You go on, my late husband, all the things that he took that cured his cancer the first time made his hip collapse out of his socket and he was dragging his leg behind him. I mean, like all these things, there's still so many awful, dangerous things and toxins that go into you. So the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is doing so much research to help come up with these things to make things better. They are now doing so much research that their research is being used to cure and form treatments for other forms of cancer. So if you go on Wife, Widow, Now What, or on Instagram, I have at the top of my page under my bio a link tree thing. But on either of those, you can go on there and you can donate. So that's one of the most powerful things you can do. And a lot of employers do match donations. So it sometimes, might take 5-10 minutes, or you might have to reach out to your manager to get help figuring out how to do that. But you donate and then your company will most likely match it at like 100%. So your $20 could be 40. But
Mm.
it's really powerful right now to be able to do something. And my platform, what I'm trying to say to people is, we're going through so much ugliness right now, and this is a tangible thing that you can do. I'm going to show you, Harry. Last night I did the kickoff event for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and there's this little girl, Cecilia. Look at how tiny this little nugget is. This is her. She's 4 and she's fighting cancer. She's fought it 2 times now and she's 4 years old. Like, she
Wow.
needs you. Kids need you. I recently learned like someone had 9-month-old twins and both of them had cancer and one of them lived and one of them didn't. Like, things like this should not be happening. Being able to read a pamphlet when I was going through all this of patient support and things like that really did make me feel less alone. So that's really powerful. So I would greatly appreciate it if you could donate. If you can't, that's totally cool. If you can do $5, whatever. But yeah, pass it along, because knowledge is power. And, more than likely, what's really scary is 1 in 5 people get cancer, and think of 100 people, that's a lot of them. So I was not able to do the math for that.
I can't
I
judge.
was trying to think of it. But those things, there's a lot of support out there. You can do a lot of good right now. And just check out Wife, Widow, Now What. Even if it's not applicable to you now, it will help you navigate. If this is me, if this is my sibling, if this is my parent, I will know how to adequately help someone. Also, it's entertaining. I had a lot of really crazy shit happen. So it's a good story, but it's a good story of, how I went through the most horrific thing in the world. I would not wish on my worst enemy to where I am now. And I truly am okay. It did take a lot of work, but I'm truly am okay. And I'm really proud to share it with the world.
I love it. Yeah. And so is that, is donating to that organization, is that year round?
It's actually, thank you for asking. It's just, yeah, you can year round, but what I'm doing, it's just 10 weeks. So it's just started yesterday, March 11th through May 21st. So if you're listening to this and it's beyond that, you can still donate. It's still amazing. Just go to lls.org. Like limasam.org, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.org, and you can make a powerful impact because they really do need your help.
Love it. And with that, we're done. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on.
I
appreciate you taking the time to share your story and share what you're doing. Like, I think it's really important. So thank you.
Thank you.
And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching another episode of my show. If you want more episodes of the H Panel, the button's going to be right here. If you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, it'll be right down below. Please like, comment, share, give 5 stars. Let's keep this conversation going, guys, all right? I'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.